Good morning, reflectors.
Good morning.
Welcome and welcome back to Morning Intentions. And that's right, it's August 7th and it's Reflection Friday, our first reflection of our theme of the courage to know yourself. Annette, would you like to start us off today?
I would, because I've been thinking about coping strategies and I've been reflecting on the coping strategies that I've had. And when we start looking at ourselves, when we start becoming the observer, when we start seeing ourselves act from this compulsive or reactive place, so much of that is based on a coping strategy. I want to make sure that we all know what a coping strategy is, but also I want to talk about a few so that we all know that we're not alone in this. Like, there isn't a person alive that doesn't have a coping strategy, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. Like, that's part of the human experience. As we're living, and this is what the Enneagram teaches, as we're living, we all become what the Enneagram expresses as wounded, meaning we don't know what to do in the situation, so we learn something to do, and that's a coping strategy. And that coping strategy only has to work one time, and then we think, oh, well, that worked. That worked really well. I'm going to try it again. And then we try it again, but that's when it becomes an unconscious pattern because we try it so much we don't realize that we're just using that over and over and over and over again. The coping strategies, I want us all to know we're all in the same boat. We all have coping strategies. We may not have the same coping strategies, but no one among us does not have a coping strategy. Now, there can be positive coping strategies. And then there can be the coping strategies that make our life feel stressful, get us into situations that are quite challenging. Coping strategies in and of themselves are not just awful things, but we need to be aware of what our coping strategies are. And we also have to open up those blind spots that Ada was talking about earlier this month, so that if we do have a blind spot, we can work on it. And we're not seeking perfection here. We have to bring compassion to all of this work. Here are a few examples that Ada and I thought about so that if all of this language is new to you and you've never thought about coping strategies, if you've never thought about having an automatic response and just being on autopilot, here are some coping strategies that may not serve you any longer. You learned them years ago and you're still learning them. And maybe now you pay a higher price for using them. So the first one is busying ourselves. This is a very common coping strategy. We busy ourselves because if we busy ourselves, we don't have to think about what's going on inside. We don't have to do things that other people ask us to do because, I'm just so busy. I would do it, but I'm so busy. I can't do it.
And when that's coming from the unconscious, we don't know that that's what we're doing, and we can busy ourselves right out of relationships.
Oh, 1000%. It's also like this acceptable excuse. So we can get into, well, if I look really busy, if I am really busy, then people aren't going to bother me. People are going to leave me alone. People aren't going to ask me to do something or be involved in something that I don't want to do, but I can't just say that. So then I busy myself so I don't have to really be authentic.
But then going back to the unconscious, you're like have the unconscious monologue going, but the unconscious wouldn't even know that. No. I'm busy. I got this thing to do. I got that thing to do. I got work. I have a lot of work. I have my family stuff. So we can do all of these things. And on the surface, they look great. Yeah, that's great. All great things to do. But then The unconscious side of it is, what is the busyness keeping us from? How do we think the busyness is serving us? And that's where we do want to build awareness and start to look at, if we live a very busy life, what can be a reason for that busyness?
This is kind of related, but this is another coping strategy of always being helpful. When we're always being helpful to other folks, we don't have to look at what's going on inside of us. If I'm always trying to meet other people's needs, I don't have to look at my own needs. It could be that when we look at our own needs, we see that, painfully so, that many of them aren't met. So it's much easier on us. And that's why it becomes a coping strategy, is I'm just going to be so helpful over here so I don't have to feel that loneliness inside of me or that emptiness inside of me. But the tragic part of that is, when we don't recognize that we have needs and we don't recognize what they are, we still are missing out, and we know it somehow inside, that unconscious. But we just keep those wheels a turning, helping everybody else, so that we don't have to look inside. Because once we look inside and we acknowledge that we have needs that are not being met, that's the scariest part. I want all of us to know that's the scariest part. But once you acknowledge it, then you can start working on meeting those needs. It's just a hard thing to look at. But then once you look at it, it kind of takes the wind out of the sails. It's no longer scary. It's like, oh, I have a need to be seen. And I'm not seen in the relationship I have with my supposed best friend. I need to do something about this, and I can do something about this. But continually being helpful is very much related to continually being busy. That's where we can become stuck. Here's another one. Ada, you had this, I know, and you had it so much so I didn't even know you were sad. Is
being funny.
Being the funny one. Being the funny one always. Like, if you're always funny and if you're always making a joke, it's a way to keep everyone's emotions at arm's length, even your own. Is there something more that you'd like to share about being the funny one? Because, Ada, you were so funny always. I didn't even know you were sad. I mean, this was years ago. Like, we're like 20 years past this. But I didn't know that you were sad because you were always cracking a joke.
Not that I don't like jokes, but I wouldn't even call myself the funny one anymore. I don't even know if I'm all that funny.
You're fun, but you're not funny like that. But you also had such self-depreciating humor, and then also you would be very judgy about other people, but put it in a funny way. You don't do that at all anymore. Like, that isn't even at all what you do.
And I think that's a great example from the unconscious to the conscious. You know, I wasn't trying to be the funny one. I do like to laugh, but I wasn't trying to be funny. And I saw this early on in our coaching careers, where people would be sharing something that was uncomfortable for me, and then I had this compulsiveness to crack a joke. And that just opened my eyes, because I didn't think about it. I knew that's not an appropriate time for a joke, and I would tell myself, this isn't the time. Ada, this is not the time. But there was just that thing inside of me that said, after I analyzed it, this is too heavy, even for me. I want to lighten up the situation. The unconscious pattern of that was, I just did it. I didn't think about it. I just did it. And so that's kind of why I'm trying to bring us back to, these are unconscious. It's not like there's something inside of you saying, well, this is a really tough situation, so I should make a joke and try to lighten up the mood. We may look back and have that analysis and say that's kind of what our inner monologue or inner dialogue is saying. But when we're just going through life and we have these compulsive behaviors and the unconscious beliefs and patterns, there's really no train of thought that goes with it. It just, you feel it in your body and then you do it. So even when I was the funny one, I didn't think about, this would be a great way to ignore how I really feel. I just was the funny one. I just made jokes.
And you were funny. That was the thing. We don't realize the seriousness of all of this because you were funny. Other people are very helpful. Other people do feel completely busy. And then we have to step back enough to watch ourselves and to realize this is a coping strategy. This isn't even what I really want to be doing right now. This kind of whets our appetite for next week. I wanted to finish talking about coping strategies on Monday and share a few more. And then we'll get into other topics within the Enneagram that are extremely helpful for us all to start realizing as we make those life changes, taking this all the way back to last month, as we make the life changes, as we're reprioritizing, we want to truly know ourselves. This month is going to help us do that.
So for our intention for today and for this weekend, let's do more curiosity challenges. And we're using the 3 coping strategies that Annette brought up today. Do you find yourself being overly busy? Do you find yourself being helpful? And do you find yourself being funny? And not just occasionally funny, but check in. Is this more than necessary? Just start to get a taste of, is this how I'm showing up? And if you say, I don't feel that busy, I don't feel that helpful, I'm not that funny, maybe there's someone you know that this is a blind spot for them, and you can check in with that.
And sometimes it's easier to see it in other people than to see it in ourselves.
It's a lot easier, but then we want to take that and then say, am I like that? So busy, helpful, and funny, check in with that today and this weekend, and we'll continue with our different coping strategies on Monday. But until then, thank you so much for joining us today and this week. Our day is better because you are part of our day. See you Monday.
See you then.
I'm wanting something more, and I'm ready to begin.